Reba McEntire found in her mother's kitchen ice all around. I thought, ain't no way I'm going that away. So I just turned back to Mom and I said, here you go. And she took a sip and she went, Alec, where's the ice?
Reliable, polite, untouchable. That was the image Reba McEntire protected in country music for more than 4 decades. Then at the Grand Ole Opry's 100th anniversary, something broke. In an unguarded moment, Reba exposed a powerful industry figure who had deliberately worked against her, someone who chose public humiliation over professional collaboration. That revelation even stunned Nashville. Who could push Reba McEntire to that point? And was this really just a personal feud or proof of a much darker pattern behind the scenes? Stay with us as we uncover the legendary names Reba McEntire has never forgiven. Number 1, Tanya Tucker, the legend who publicly humiliated Reba McEntire. The person Reba McEntire despises the most more than anyone else on the Opry stage is Tanya Tucker because she didn't hurt Reba in private. She humiliated her in public on purpose and never took it back. For years, Tanya and Reba were presented as allies, 2 women who survived the same industry, the same dismissals, the same closed doors. Behind the scenes, they spoke candidly about challenges in country music. That shared history is exactly why the betrayal cut so deep. The explosion happened in 2014 during a nationally recognized all-female tribute honoring women who built country music from the ground up. Reba's absence was immediately noticed. Fans questioned it. There was no explanation until Tanya responded herself. Instead of clarifying, Tanya posted one line online, "Not everyone gets an invite to the party." That sentence became infamous. It was a calculated dismissal. By calling it a party, Tanya reduced Reba's 4-decade contribution to something trivial, implying she simply didn't belong. People close to Reba say that was the moment she stopped pretending there was any misunderstanding. Tanya knew exactly who the public was asking about. She knew Reba would see it, and she chose to answer anyway. What made the insult worse was its history. In the mid-1990s, Reba had already been quietly removed from a shared hosting role at a major country music Hall of Fame event after Tanya's team allegedly offered exclusive access in exchange for making Tanya the sole host. Reba said nothing then. She absorbed it. But 2014 was different. After that post, Reba ended all contact. No calls, no attempts at reconciliation. When asked later about rivalry among women in country music, Reba said only, "I believe in lifting each other up. I also believe people show you who they are." That quote explains everything. Tanya didn't just take a spotlight. She used public mockery to erase Reba's place in history, and that is why she ranks number 1. Number 2, Vince Gill, the silence that cut deeper than betrayal. Ranked second on Reba McEntire's private list of unforgivable legends is Vince Gill because he erased her and pretended nothing happened. The fracture began at the 2001 CMA Awards, a night designed to reinforce Reba's standing as one of country music's most powerful voices. She was scheduled for a televised duet that had been rehearsed, approved, and carefully staged. Her team had confirmed timing, wardrobe, and promotion. Then hours before the final run-through, her name disappeared from the set list. No warning arrived. The duet just went forward with Vince Gill. What turned a professional slight into permanent hostility was what came next. Vince did not call. He did not explain. He did not apologize. Reba later described the experience in a rare moment of candor. The silence was louder than any insult. That line matters because Reba has never demanded protection or favors. She has demanded respect. Being replaced could have been survivable. Being replaced and then ignored was not. Industry insiders at the time confirmed that Vince's influence within CMA and Opry-adjacent circles was growing rapidly. Even a brief objection could have forced a discussion. Even a private acknowledgement could have preserved trust. None came. Reba interpreted the silence as consent, if not orchestration. The aftermath was quiet. Reba did not leak complaints. She simply closed the door. Their interactions became formal, distant, and rare. Collaboration stopped. Warmth vanished. The relationship never recovered. Years later, when asked about painful industry moments, Reba referenced a performance that never aired and declined to elaborate. Those close to her knew exactly what she meant. The refusal to name Vince publicly was deliberate. She believed actions spoke clearly enough. That night taught Reba a rule she never forgot. When someone benefits from your disappearance and says nothing, they have already chosen a side. Number 3, Travis Tritt, the gatekeeper who decided Reba McEntire didn't belong. Why did Travis Tritt decide that Reba McEntire no longer belonged in certain rooms of country music? The conflict just began with a decision made behind closed doors. In the early 2000s, Reba was invited to join a high-profile all-star country project meant to celebrate tradition, grit, and legacy. Reba accepted without hesitation. This was recognition of her stature. Then the final lineup was released and her name was gone. No call, no explanation. Reba didn't hear the news from management. She found out through a studio employee, someone embarrassed to deliver information that never should have been secret. Multiple insiders later confirmed that Travis Tritt had objected to her presence, arguing that the project should remain a male-driven anthem. His position carried weight. The producers listened. The situation escalated months later. Reba agreed to perform at a Georgia charity event connected to Tritt's management circle. She cleared her schedule. She rehearsed. Days before the show, her appearance was quietly canceled. The explanation was vague. Her performance no longer fit the program. No one called Reba directly. That silence mattered. When Reba was later asked about Travis Tritt during a press interaction, she offered a single sentence. "We don't sing in the same key." Those who knew her understood the weight behind it. Reba wasn't talking about music. She was talking about values, about who believes country music has room for women at the center and who believes it should be guarded like private property. Of course, Travis never insulted Reba publicly. He didn't need to. His actions communicated clearly enough. She was welcome until she wasn't convenient. They have never repaired the relationship. They do not collaborate. They do not share stages. For Reba, Travis Tritt represents something she cannot forgive. Not personal dislike, but the deliberate use of influence to decide who gets erased simply because they don't fit someone else's definition of belonging. And once Reba saw that line drawn, she never stepped across it again. Number 4, Pete Fisher and Dan Rogers. The night Reba McEntire was silenced at a farewell. Number 4 on Reba McEntire's list of unforgivable betrayals is Pete Fisher and Dan Rogers, behind the Grand Ole Opry itself, because they chose institutional control over compassion at the worst possible moment. The fracture happened in May 2022 during the memorial honoring Naomi Judd. This was not an ordinary event. Naomi was not just a legend to Reba. She was a peer, a confidant, and a woman whose struggles Reba deeply understood. When Reba was invited to perform a closing tribute, it carried emotional weight. The song was chosen carefully. Rehearsals were private. Then, less than 24 hours before the memorial, the structure of the program changed. Reba's role was quietly reduced. Her performance was shortened. Her placement in the lineup was shifted earlier, stripping the tribute of its intended meaning. There was no phone call. There was no discussion. Reba learned of the decision through an updated rundown emailed to her team. According to people close to the situation, Pete Fisher and Dan Rogers pushed the revision. Pete Fisher had previously clashed with Reba over scheduling and visibility. Dan Rogers had privately complained that Reba appeared too often at high-profile Opry broadcasts. At Naomi Judd's memorial, those resentments resurfaced. The decision was political. Reba still went on stage. She sang with restraint and grace. She did not signal anger. She did not alter the tone of the night. When the performance ended, she left the venue. She declined interviews. She skipped the after-event dinner. She went home. Weeks later on a podcast, Reba addressed the night in a rare moment of vulnerability. "That night broke my heart in more ways than one. The meaning was unmistakable. This was about losing the right to say goodbye publicly in a moment that should never have been negotiated or diminished." Reba continues to respect the Opry as an institution. She still steps onto that stage, but those close to her say the trust never returned. Something fundamental shifted that night. This was an emotional boundary crossed and remembered. Number 5, Garth Brooks. The promise that rewired Reba McEntire's trust. The last place on Reba McEntire's unforgivable list belongs to the moment. Money, calendars, and silence collided, and Garth Brooks was standing at the center of it. It started as a business conversation in the early 2000s, the kind that only happens between equals. Reba and Garth discussed a co-headlining tour. Routing was considered. Reba adjusted commitments to make room. People around her understood the plan was moving. Then the momentum vanished. Announcements appeared. The tour concept survived. Reba's name did not. She didn't get a warning call. She didn't get a hold tight. She learned the way the public did after the decision had already hardened. Sources allege Garth redirected the tour after reassessing commercial control and branding, choosing a different configuration that offered him clearer authority. What angered Reba wasn't the pivot, it was the method. By clearing space for a tour that evaporated without notice, Reba looked exposed, professionally blindsided in an industry that punishes surprise. The hurt landed immediately because trust had been treated as expendable. Years later, Reba addressed this kind of injury without names, writing, "A promise made in private can still destroy you in public." That sentence mattered because it described the consequence precisely. The damage wasn't personal humiliation. It was the quiet erosion of credibility when plans dissolve without explanation. Reba never confronted Garth publicly. She didn't hint at it in interviews. She didn't weaponize the story. But the temperature changed. Joint ideas stalled. Invitations cooled. Professional warmth became formality. Insiders claim this episode rewired how Reba did business with Nashville's biggest power players. Handshakes gave way to contracts. Optimism yielded to verification. Silence stopped being interpreted as patience. This was the one that taught her never to rely on trust alone again. After all, Reba McEntire didn't shout. She didn't accuse. She simply chose not to forget. Do you think silence is more powerful than confrontation in Nashville? And if you had to guess, who do you believe hurt her the most? Leave your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more untold stories behind country music's polished curtain.